quick note, Connie suggested another site or source for Python tutorials, W3 Schools. So check that one out when you get a chance. That's that one. Also, so one of the things that I've heard a couple of times over the course of the workshop is some people are having problems purchasing equipment occasionally. Okay? And I don't mean getting equipment. I mean actually being able to purchase it because of your schools or your state's requirements for purchasing. Okay? And because we're here, I would be remiss not to talk up my local controls supplier, which is a group that does give Best Center members a discount. Okay, I have bought through them for years, both when I was running the buildings around here and for the program. And Best Center has actually bought directly from them for some of the workshops we've done here. So they are a resource that is available. The company's name is Control Depot. Last I saw, I think they were still on our partner site. So if you have issues, if you don't have a local control supplier, okay, especially if you don't have a local control supplier, use mine. They will help you. Okay, if you need me to put you in contact with them, let me know. There are some, if you reach out to them and don't hear back from them, let me know that too. I'll go down and kick the chair out from under them and get you some action. Okay? So, I did just want to put that one out there. So, like I said, if you've got problems getting stuff because of purchasing things or lack of a place to buy it, we can help. Okay?
Player's credit card or Peter's?
Okay. Now, I'm not going to say they're not having the supply chain issues that everybody else is having. They have them too. So, all right. So we've talked about schedules and programs. Let's do some, shall we? We've got that occupancy point sitting there doing nothing useful. Well, let's make it useful. All right. I'm going to make my navigation tree just a little bit wider so I can see it. And one thing that Sean ran into yesterday was that he had created so many points on his tree that he didn't have any space down at the bottom to right-click without clicking on a point. If you run into that, come all the way up to the top, and you can right-click right on your parent object. Okay, so if you're out of room in the tree, click all the way at the top. Okay, so we're going to right-click. We're going to create a new item, and of course, we're going to start off with a schedule. I'm going to have to log in. Okay, kind of our basic information. We got to give it a name. We can give it a description if we want. That's pretty much it. All that we have to do. Okay? So I got a schedule. Left click on it. And this is the active view of the schedule. This is what's going on right now. Well, that's unexciting, isn't it? Nothing's going on. Well, of course, because we haven't set anything up yet. Okay? I'm going to point out right along the top in our toolbar, there is a couple of buttons. Far left brings us back to this view that we're in here. It's red because that's what we're looking at. This little checkbox, that's our edit view. So let's edit it. Let's see what happens. Oh, sorry, that's the exception view. You got to click all the way on the right-hand side to get to edit. My fault. Now I'm back on the all the way to left button, so I hit edit here and came back all the way left. Sorry, got my sequence screwed up. This is one of those things where I think computers are training us to do things the way they want us to do things, which is, anyway. So, let's say, what is today? Today is Thursday, right? Let's change our schedule for Thursday. Just click that plus button. And it wants to know what time we're starting on Thursday. What time did we start this morning? 8? Okay? 8. Make sure you're on AM, not PM. Hit OK. Now it asks us for our stop time. We are done tonight at about 7 o'clock. PM, of course. Hit OK. Ta-da. Easy as that. And honestly, doing most schedule setup, real similar. If we needed to add a little bit of extra time here, you know, maybe about 10 o'clock at night tonight is when our cleaning staff comes in, we'll create a second time event. 10 o'clock to midnight. Okay. Now we got 2 events on Thursday. Easy squeezy. Now, this one you got to be a little bit careful with, but actually no. Let's put in our what time we started on Tuesday. That was a normal day, right? Okay. Again, we started at 8, of course, and we were done at 5, give or take. Okay. So we got a weird day and we got a normal day. Great. You know something, a useful thing to know about programmers? They do their best to be efficient with their time. It's a nice way of saying they're lazy. Okay? So we could go through and manually add all our times to the other days, or we come up here and hit this little 2 sheets of paper icon, and we can copy times. So we can copy from any day of the week. Of course, we entered data into Tuesday, and we can copy it wherever we want. Let's copy it to Monday and Wednesday, because we're not going to be here on Friday. Tomorrow, we're at the hotel. Hit OK. Bam, copied. Robin.
12 a.m.
12 a.m.?
What day is that? What time is it? If that's 12 a.m. on Thursday, that would be the first second of Thursday, right?
That is an excellent question. You know how and this is exactly what I tell the students. Test it and figure it out. You tell me. I don't know. That it is a very valid question.
I think if you put it down on the start part of it, it'll make it first, second, that day.
So,
it'll be last, second, that.
I think
The-
what you're giving the programmers
you know what the practical solution for that is, though? Let's use 11:59 p.m., right? And that gets us in. Okay, we've got an event in the schedule. We need to edit it. I want to change this time. I'm going to click on this time. Thursday stop. We'll just change it to 11. Okay, I don't know why this is a scrolling window, but, you know, you win some, you lose some.
I know that because I know working with Blackboard. If I have the exam due at midnight on Tuesday, it's actually do it
Yep.
a day early, and they don't know that.
All right. So, I made that change. I didn't see a result. I refreshed my page. I logged back in. My stuff's gone. What did I do wrong? I didn't save it. You win some, you lose some. Hang on. Let me re-enter my stuff. Come, scroll.
Oh, good.
At least I didn't stop.
Not quite for it. Forgot to see him.
Thank you.
See where you're right there, the start date, whatever.
There. That way you don't have to watch me fumble through trying to find 59 again. Okay, so you make your changes, you save. Russell.
Could you go over the multiple copies again?
Sure.
I'm having problems with mine because on Monday's highlighted, it won't let me choose Monday.
Let me come check, take a look. That's an interesting one. Okay. Okay, so just go ahead and hit your copy. Oh, so if you want to copy from Monday, you need to have information in Monday. So instead, let's copy from Wednesday that you've got set up. Hit cancel. Hit the little 2 sheets of paper up there. And now hit the drop down at the top where it says Monday right now. Let's change that to Wednesday. There we go. And then, nope, hang on. Cancel again. Hit your 2 sheets of paper. Select Wednesday. Hit the checkbox next to Monday and Tuesday. That's where it'll copy it to. Okay, now hit OK. There you go.
Apply this schedule.
Yes, we are.
Good.
Firework.
Change from the highlights and everything to number?
Why do you want to?
Don't know, just because it just came up. Just because of what you said with Monday, not highlight.
So
I know it's my Thursday.
as far as I know, being highlighted in this menu doesn't actually do anything.
Default is Monday.
It's just literally the last thing you clicked on sort of thing, as far as I can tell. Good question. Okay? You're all right. So, everybody got a schedule with some information in it? Pretty easy, right? Let's move over to our calendar little icon. Okay? So, one of the common challenges we run into with schedules is weird days. Holidays, special event days, snow days. Yep, right, Bob?
Yeah.
They're a pain. So we have what we call exceptions, okay, or events. Depends on the system what they call it. This is where we will add these on this. So if you click in here, you can right click, and oh, that's right. You have to hit the plus sign up at the top right. Let's add something like Thanksgiving. Single date.
The third, are we editing schedule? Or,
No.
We have to close the schedule.
No?
Just gotta click on that little calendar.
Your icon.
Oh, here? This one here?
Yeah.
Of one of the.
So the thing, oh, it looks like a battery.
That's all that calendar that the springs on when you get to the wall.
Okay, hit the little edit button that's on the far right. That one. There you go.
Oh, close. It changes.
Right? Isn't scrolling on this a nightmare?
They just click on it. Then,
Nope. So hit your edit button, the far right one. Right. There we go. Now there's your plus. Okay. This is where you would set up holiday schedules. So, a single date, easy to set up. We can also add a date range. So maybe we've got, I don't know, winter recess. Okay? I'm going to select something more like spring break because it happens at the beginning of a month and then I don't have to scroll through a million things and be annoyed. So I'm going to come back up here to April. And we'll just leave it at like April 2nd to the 9th.
How long is your spring break?
Honestly, our spring break is Saturday and Sunday.
Really?
Yeah. We're quarter schedule, so all of our schedule stuff is annoying. Okay. So, now we can see we've got our day, we've got our date range. One thing you will notice right now, we don't have any information set up on these. Okay? So by default, the schedule is going to think, okay, that means I'm in an off value. If you don't program anything in, the schedule says off. I'm taking a vacation too. Bye. So maybe over the spring break, we're just limited hours. Maybe it's, 10 to 2 or something like that. If that's the case, then we got to hit the plus sign and we're adding our times just like before. 10 a.m. 2 p.m. Go. And of course, nobody's going to be here on Thanksgiving. So we can just leave that blank. What should we do now? Save. So, we've got some folks in here who will remember this. One of the things, and some of you may have heard me say this before, but back years ago in Chicago, there was a saying when election time came around. Vote early, vote often, right? Corruption was common at that time.
Still is.
I wasn't going to say it. I adapt that for students. Save early, save often.
I think it means 101.
Yeah, it really is. And that's, I really have to hammer that on students right now because so many of the programs they're used to using for school have autosave. So that's one of those things. Day one of class, the first time we get out the computers and start programming. Hey, everybody, eyes up here. This doesn't autosave. This is not Word. If you don't save it, it's your own fault. If you hit save and it doesn't save it, then it's the computer's fault. Except you probably really didn't hit save and you're just trying to lie to me. So, but we now have it saved. Okay? There is one last thing we need to do to make this schedule actually useful. Because right now it's a schedule. But it's not talking to anything else. It is just a schedule floating out in the island, just enjoying life, right? So we got to hook it up to something. If we go over and click our little light bulb, now we can add a point or multiple points. Okay? So again, we're going to use that plus sign on the far right. Hit the plus and hey, look. A little menu pops up and we can just drag a point right on over. Like awk.
How did we say?
Like awk. Hit the save icon.
Is that the floppy drive? Yeah.
Yes, it is. The floppy disk.
Floppy disk.
Yep. So when we drop our point, we need to tell it what's our active mode, what's our inactive mode. That way, when we do things like differing our occupancy versus being on and off, we can fix that. Okay? However you want to set it up. Okay? Notice that you can also plug in some delays here.
So Robert, active means that when this schedule's in play, you want this point to be in this.
Correct. Probably would be more helpful if mine didn't say cats and dogs, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what the Cats occupied.
Correct. Correct. So, why is this active offset, inactive offset potentially useful?
Stagger start.
Staggered start. You got a whole building full of heat pumps. You don't want them all turning on at the same time. That'll cause havoc. So, you go through, you give them some staggering offset somewhere between, it doesn't have to be a lot, 10, 15 seconds. Start them all over the course of 2-3 minutes. Life's pretty good.
That was interesting that crazy starts at the day start.
Yeah. Well, when they go through all that filtering that they go through, by the time the power or the demand hits their service, everything's already been smoothed out by the UPSs and everything. So
Created just for this.
yes. So a lot of it's variable speed, but you also notice that when it turns on at full steam to start. So yeah. But, Russell,
No plus sign.
no plus sign? Is your edit mode active?
Okay. So the edit mode's the pen that's on the table.
Is when you click, is it trying to scroll you around? Close?
Yeah.
Modifications are not allowed on that point. Okay, so let's right click on our occupied point, edit point, scroll down, keep going, modification settings. Hit your allow modification. Okay. And try and drag it in. There you go.
Thank you.
So, Jenny just ran into a really great thing. Trying to drag the point over, it said, this point can't be modified. Okay? So it can't be written to, it was just, I'm a point. Go away. Okay? When you run into that, right click on the point, go to your edit point, scroll all the way down on your settings menu to modification settings. It's just a little checkbox. Why they made a whole menu for that, whatever.
Just for clarification, the offsets,
Mm-hmm.
negative means before, positive means after, or did I get backwards?
Once again, back to that. Congratulations, student. That's a great question. Experiment and report back.
Robert,
Yep. Sir.
dragging his point over here is telling us no modifications allowed.
Yep. And I just literally said that. Man, I feel like I'm in class. So, once again, right click on the original point, the awk point. Edit point. Scroll down on your list until you see modification settings. Click on that, and now hit that radial check box that says allow modification. Hit OK, and now drag it over.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Let-
drag a point down. It says no modification.
Lanny, I got a whole set of pens up here. Nobody's using them. Okay, one person's using one. All right. So, once we've added our point, we hit OK. please note, we can see our little details about this point right here. Okay? And we can add more points. We can add a whole slew of points to this if we want to. I do not know what the upper limit is. I don't plan on trying to find out in this activity. The scrolling would kill me.
Wow.
So, but there we go. Once again, save. And now, let's turn off edit mode. Con.
The refresh optional, what is that?
Minutes to wait between resending point values. So, some systems get nervous. And if they haven't heard from the boss after a while, they you know, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And sometimes they won't hold on to a value. So occasionally, just to make sure they're okay, the boss has to check in. Hey, you're still doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? That's what this is. So it will occasionally resend the occupancy point.
Okay, but we probably don't want to leave it at 0.
So at 0, that means it is inactive.
Oh, okay.
When we start putting times in, that's when it's going to do it. So I definitely see why you would be concerned about 0, because from the programming side, that would mean it's constantly, hey, 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 hey. They covered us there. So
Oh, it says 0 is disabled. I just read it off. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
no, that's a great question. So we go back out of edit mode after we saved. We can swing all the way over to the left side on our schedule. Schedule's active, life is good, right? Let's click on our occupied point and see what it says. We should be occupied, right? Well, maybe, depending on what time my controller thinks it is. Nope. Yeah, right. Larry was here. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Because Larry's paying attention. Uh-huh. Sure, Bob. So yeah, I was wrong. It was left click on the point. Nice try, though. So, my controller is not, I have not set the time on my controller. Give me one moment to do so. Where was that? That was edit settings. And yes, I am aware that it is not 10:30.
No, mine's black.
Robert,
Yes, sir?
but you've got on the red, on your
Correct.
left, yours is red,
Correct.
mine's green.
So the red is signifying that we are in an unoccupied time. Green signifies that it is occupied.
Okay.
That's great.
So if we were to change the occupied mode manually right now,
Mm-hmm.
and because we don't have the refresh, with the refresh disabled, it would just stay off
Until the next
beginning of the
change
next
of
schedule,
mode.
it would turn it off.
Correct. Which, in a system like this, makes things like unexpected closed events. So water line broke, snow day, whatever. Makes those really convenient because somebody can just come in and turn it off and not worry about having to undo it later. You don't come in and put in an exception day because we had a snow day today. You just come in and say, unoccupied, and tomorrow when we come back in at 8 a.m., it just kicks back into normal.
It's interesting, because I think one of the things that I get kind of screwed up with, from being a programmer standpoint, is I have to attend to all those details.
Correct.
I've known all about the little details because I've had to
Yep.
put them in there.
The classic, I turned it on, why didn't it turn it off?
Right.
Because you never told it to turn off.
Right.
Yep. So,
So knowing that, understanding the default behavior when I didn't create that behavior.
right. So, that's creating a schedule. No, I don't know why mine is not behaving. I know why mine's not behaving because I'm actually in the exception time period on the bloody date.
Robert, is a BAS programmer going to go through and do every point, or are they going to have a canned set of instructions?
We're going to get to that, Peter.
Okay.
That is a great question. So, for those who didn't hear Peter's question, he asked, is the programmer going to come through and manually set up every point in something like this? And the answer is yes, and then no. Okay? Like I said before, a programmer is as optimal with their time, lazy as possible. Okay? So, what they're going to do is they're going to do it once. They'll write the program once. And they will reuse it as many times down the road as they can. So, you write your mixed air damper control program once, and you copy it down the road until it is no longer applicable. Or you copy it in and make the small modifications for that specific application. Okay? You will largely do the same thing when you're creating data points like this, but you have to be really careful with that. When you're doing it from a head-end perspective, if the VAV that you're pulling data from on job A is not exactly the same as the one you do on job B, when you try and copy that over, you will cause yourself problems. Okay?
Well, and if you make an error on job one, then that error will
Error
replicate.
continues on down,
Yeah.
which is another argument for being thorough when you commission your systems, when you do checkout. Like I said yesterday, if I didn't see it turn on, it didn't turn on, as far as I'm concerned. And that includes testing your programs as well. If I didn't see the program take the input of the low limit thermostat tripping and shut everything off that it's supposed to and open our hot water valve wide, if I didn't test that function, as far as I know, it doesn't work. Until I prove to myself that it works, it doesn't. And if I haven't proved it to myself, I'm not walking away from it because I don't trust it. Again, that's how I do things. But, you know.
If my boss is yapping at me to get out of that job and go to another one, and I've got how many points on a job to verify?
Yep.
Hundreds, thousands?
Easily thousands, even on small jobs. I did a job with literally one air handler that had, I don't know, 200-300 points. There was a lot of testing that has to be done. And for the most part, the people who run the controls companies acknowledge you're going to have to spend time testing critical equipment. Chiller plants, boiler plants, air handlers. Place where most control companies start breathing down your neck, are you done yet? Is when you start testing massive amounts of VAV boxes. And I will acknowledge sometimes on those situations you start. I always did more than spot check. I checked every box. But I used a lot of cause and effect testing. So if I had 50 VAV boxes to test, I would manually command dampers open and watch and make sure the airflow increased. That allows me to test both the damper actuation and the airflow measurement in one go. Open the hot water valve after that. Okay? Test the hot water valve actuation, watch the discharge air temperature go up. Those kind of things. So, yes, there are, I don't really want to call them tricks of the trade because they're not tricks, they're just, it's cause and effect testing. It's not my favorite, but if you're in a building that has 800 VAV boxes, you're right, your boss, if you want to go and check everything, it's going to take time. The other option is that you use another trusted person to either run the computer for you and you put eyes on it, or you run the computer and they put eyes on it and can say, yep, I see the valve opening, I see the valve closing. Sir.
I've been in the building commissioning industry for a long time. Commissioned over 1,000 some buildings. I've only been about 1,000 of those 1,000 buildings actually had the schedule correct and in place. 99% of the time, the schedule's either missing or it's incorrect.
Yep.
And the sad thing about it is, I mean, that's what governs the efficiency of the whole building.
It is.
And they're usually running 24/7.
Yep. Proper scheduling and setting up proper scheduling is the massive low-hanging fruit item to make any building, or just about any building, so much more efficient. I mean, it has one of the highest ROI, lowest ROIs. Like seriously, in some buildings, just properly adjusting the schedule for the occupancy has an ROI of days. But you're right. The number of buildings that are running on improperly set up or missing schedules is huge. It's like the number of factory rooftop economizers that work properly, where we're set up properly, haven't failed. That list goes on. Anyway.
I preach a use of exception schedules for the period of time, like dead of winter, dead of summer, when you know it's going to be multiple days of 105-degree weather. Okay, my optimal start is not going to catch up with my building fast enough, so I want to start my building up. Most people will go in, okay, we're going to start this building at midnight. We're going to be cool. Then a couple weeks go by, a couple more weeks go by, and all of a sudden your building's running 24/7.
Yep.
You would use that as set it up as an an exceptional start schedule.
Yep.
Then
For
when your
a
date
like a
range, when it ends, then your building reverts back to normal.
absolute.
Utility bills are not all of a sudden.
Absolutely right. The one cautionary I will give on that is, and this is going to be very system dependent, you have to make sure when you're setting up that date range that it is for the year that you're looking at. That it's not going to carry on to next year and the year after that and the year after that. That is one of the things I have yet to figure out about the scheduling here for the BAS View 3 is how to have events that continue on years past. Because we're always going to have Thanksgiving, right? We're always going to have 4th of July. Those type things are things that pass on from year to year, and manually going in and setting that exception up for year after year after year after year,
Except
again,
they're different every
young product.
Thanks.
Yeah, the only thing that I see that you can set here was a definite date, like July 4th,
Right.
December 25th.
Yep.
You couldn't set Thanksgiving, because
Right.
it's a day, it's a,
Right.
it's a
And
week day.
Those features will come later on as long as Contemporary Controls decides it's worth the development investment to do so.
Most control systems were like this back 15, 20 years ago.
Absolutely right. Yeah, you could not,
Because
10 years ago, half of them you couldn't tell, I want the third Thursday of the month. It had to be this date, this month, this date. Some had, you still had to put in specifically this year. Others had like a checkbox or something for every year on this date, do this. So, Peter.
But again, sort of the industry standard is about 95% of buildings are running 24/7. Is that what we just heard?
I wouldn't try and put a number on it, but
I think that's,
I think that sounds
I would
pretty
say,
reasonable.
I would say from a service technician standpoint of view, a good majority of the buildings that are out there are running close to 24/7. Now, I have noticed in the last year or two with the increase in utilities that property managers are now starting to look at their utility bills and asking questions as to why are my bills so high?
Yep.
Compared to other buildings of this nature.
Yeah.
And that is getting people to start looking at, oh, hey, wait a minute.
Yep. And I think it's almost an unfortunate thing that it's regional for that, because here in Nebraska, our power, you heard it yesterday, 8 cents a kilowatt hour. That's pretty stinking cheap. That is, it makes it very affordable to decide this building is slightly problematic when it wakes up in the morning and cold days in the winter. We'll just run it 24/7 over the winter. Makes it really annoyingly affordable. And unfortunately, the property managers, I agree, are still looking at that dollar figure and not yet looking at energy intensity. Once we kind of shift that focus, if we can get them to shift that focus, that energy intensity is a better diagnostic tool for are we running 24/7 type activity.
yeah, and the other piece of that is that from a business standpoint, if it's my building, my biggest cost is employees.
Mm-hmm.
My electrical bill is a tiny, tiny.
Inconsequential comparatively, unless you're a data center.
Right.
And the reason is that my electric consumption is heavily subsidized. I'm not paying for the externalities.
Yep. It's a problem. Like I said,
Yeah. So I'm not.
Energy intensity,
Get a price incentive
so much
in
better.
our lifetime.
yep.
Maybe
But-
because PG&E is starting to do those comparison
And
statements.
some of that really depends on area of the country too, Peter. Ours aren't subsidized here for businesses. Well, yeah. You use enough power and the power companies around here start talking to you about how can we lick your boots better. You're using so much power, you're paying us so much money. Anyway, sorry. Other questions or comments on schedules? Slightly more challenging to set up than alarms and trends were, right? But no less of a powerful tool. Whereas alarms and trends are helpful for problems, troubleshooting, things like that. And I'm not going to say trends aren't useful for energy efficiency as well. But schedules, man, they're a sledgehammer for efficiency. The classic idea of what's the most efficient light bulb in the world. The one that's off. Okay? All right. Last call for questions on schedules. By the way, eventually my controller figured out that it should be occupied, and we did go occupied. And I also have an associated alarm because my alarm was still set up on the occupancy point. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm going to close out my schedule view. Ready to move into programming? Okay. I'm going to right click over here in my white space. I'm going to create a new item. By the way, please note that until somebody messed with it, I was creating all of this under my Air Handler 1. Okay? We talked about that yesterday. There is still a reason for that. Okay? Even though it's now Larry was here, we're still going to keep working under Larry for this. Okay? So I'm going to create a new item. And now we're starting to look for our programming objects. These ones are a little bit further down on the list. Okay, but they are clustered together. We got calculations, we've got new program, we've got new runtime. Let's go ahead and do a runtime so we can start accumulating some time. New runtime. I'm calling mine building running. Okay? That's it. That would have been good. Okay. Runtime, you call it whatever makes sense for you. By the way, this is a good topical thing. I bring this up at every workshop. When I'm naming things either because they make sense to me, or I'm trying to make you laugh, get your attention, make it fun, right? I do that same thing with my students. But when I'm telling the students or answering a student's question, what should I name this? Something that makes sense to you. Okay? One of the downsides to using the Sedona programming language for teaching students, it's either a downside or an upside either way. One or the other. Maybe it's both. We only have those 7 characters for names, right? So they have to get used to abbreviations, which is something that is super, super standard in the building controls industry. Okay? Because they only have 7 characters to work with. So discharge air temperature turns into DAT. Standard nomenclature in the industry. So it starts getting them used to it. Is that helpful for somebody who is starting out? No. So, drive it into their head. Make it mean something to you. Robin.
Make it mean something to everyone. You're going to pass on, and somebody else is going to have to manage this, and that's one of the things, so like comments and programs, and documenting what those things are. And I don't, it's not easy to do in Sedona, but I did a whole Word file on all the objects with their names, what they actually meant, and the description of them on the VIV project. Because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to go back.
The reference document. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's got to be something that's, you know, doesn't mean something just to you, but to everyone.
Absolutely. I hammer that in starting with our intro students. Anytime we start working inside equipment, with tools, any of that, programming, it doesn't matter. Be nice to the next guy.
Log sheet.
Okay? What was that, Brad?
Log sheet.
Log sheet. Be nice to the next guy. Make it clean, make it easy to see. Don't leave a mess. Because you know what how the rest of that saying goes. You never know when you're going to be the next guy.
Well, the other thing too, you should really make it logical to that particular facility.
Yes.
And their way of thinking of the rooms, whether it's architectural numbering scheme or whether it's the HVAC shop, however that particular customer
Yes.
uses it. So,
Yes.
I don't look at it as something where what's logical to me was going to be most helpful for the end user.
I would agree with that from an implementation standpoint. from a learning standpoint, when they're just starting to get into this, it's got to make sense to them. Once they get something that makes sense to them, then we can start morphing that into standards that make logical sense overall, build them into that standpoint. I 100% agree it is required. By the way, with room numbering, that is one of the control technician's biggest nightmares, new construction to building ownership, because when you're building the building, the architect has a certain numbering scheme that applies on the prints, and a lot of times when the owner takes over the building, suddenly all of those numbers change, and you were already done with that floor plan graphic, and now you have to go through and change all of the numbers of all of your equipment so it all matches, and yes, that's fun. Planning.
So it's kind of, I mean, you know, when you're coming down to the naming conventions, you obviously want to try to do something fun that they remember. You know, I again, I come from an electronics world, color codes to the resistor bands. Used to have some non-PC verbiage in it. So, you know, but now, like, for example, if I'm in my class and I try to make it fun for them, I take it, I get H stuff, and I basically say the rat was sat on the mat to eat the oat, which is return air temperature, supply air temperature, mixed air temperature, outside air temperature, and exhaust air temperature. So you just come up with a phrase.
All right, we're gonna break that one more.
Yeah, say that one again for us, would you?
The rat.
Hang on, let me change
So then
colors.
capitalize RAT.
The rat
Who sat, capitalized SAT,
who sat
on a
on a
mat, MAT,
mat
to eat, EAT, the oat, OAT.
I love it. That's great. The rat who sat on a mat to eat the OAT. Or the oat, right. Sorry. I see that. Yeah. Love it. Well worth noting. That's a good one. Okay. So,
And the translation?
the return air temperature who supply air temperature on a mixed air temperature to exhaust air temperature, the outside air temperature. You were asking that for the recording, weren't you? Peter's played this game before. All right, so we have our runtime created, right? Just like anything else, first thing we got to do is we got to set it up. So this one is a little bit like setting up an alarm, okay? Matter of fact, I think it's honestly an extension of how they set up an alarm. So when we left click on it, we get this information screen about its current status, which is cool. Let's come one menu to the right, to the little hamburger stack looking thing, and see what we have here. Okay? First thing we have a runtime limit. Remember, I told you that the runtimes were intended, or appear to have been intended, to send out a message when you hit a certain milestone in time. Okay? So, by default, it's set up to 1,000 hours. Sure, that's exciting. Let's go with 1 hour. That's just what I'm setting it to, so we can see it potentially change before we call it a day. Okay? Make a change, save. Okay. 10 is the minimum. That's one of the great things about doing stuff like this, is you get to find out what your minimums and maximums are, because somebody's going to do something silly. Okay? And now we need to set up our conditions. So accumulated runtime, and we've got options of all conditions are true or any conditions are true, whichever you like. Basically, and versus or. I'm going to leave it all conditions are true, even though I'm only going to have one condition. I'm going to drag my awk point over here into the if box. If awk of Larry was here equals, I think I didn't show this last time when we were in alarms. If you want to see what the options are for this, hit the little info button at the end of the box. Okay, and it's going to look at that point that you pulled in and see what its, range is, what facets are set up, things like that. I think I typed it in. You can type it in if you know what you're looking for. Okay? So, for me, we're going to accumulate runtime anytime we are on cats. Okay? Made my change, save. Next tab over, the Word document looking one. Our message. Remember, runtime sends out a message when we hit a limit. This is not required to be filled out. If you don't fill anything in here, it will not send a message. Okay? So maybe you want to log how long a pump is running or how long your pumping system is running as a background item. Maybe they're constant volume pumps, have a good, nice, solid current reading on them, and you can just roughly calculate your energy usage based on the runtime. Please note I said roughly. Don't throw books at me. Okay? I just put a message in, so it'll send a message at me here in 10 hours. And, here next week when I've got this sitting on my desk and I get a random message, it broke. What broke? Whatever. Last tab on configuration is email. Okay? We can configure this a little bit fun. We can choose when we're going to notify in relation to that runtime. So we have it set at 10 hours. If we want to notify right when we hit 10 hours, we put 100%. If we want to notify before that, we put 10%. Less than that. 10% would give us our notification in 1 hour. Again, also, we can have it, hey, remind us, hey, come look at this, hey, come look at this, when we do it, if we want to. And just like with our alarms, we're going to choose who our message goes out to. Everything in this is designed around the email addresses. Okay? We do.
Is it here under administrators for user product? That's under all the user stuff, right?
That is under the user stuff. So. That's about it for runtime. Okay.
The semicolon separates email addresses?
Yes, it is.
So,
Good question.
when that runtime hits the limit,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to it?
Explodes.
Keeps logging.
It keeps going up.
Mm-hmm. Until the conditions that are causing it to gain time stop. So I know where you're going with this, and I hope I've got an answer here in a second. Because you're wondering how we reset the runtime.
Yeah, because if it stops at 1,000, if it comes in an alarm at 1,000, and then just keeps going, is it multiples of 1,000?
Well, that's a good question. So let's find out. I'm going to try right-clicking. Where's my runtime? There it is. On my runtime. No. I have it under edit runtime. Hey, we're running, boy.
They can change your notification percent, go 1%, it'll be 10 minutes.
Oh, wow. So you can add more conditions.
I don't know if it'd take 0.5%.
Yeah, I'm not going to try. So, I think Robin's got a great question. How would we find his answer?
Can you repeat the question?
So, how do we reset the runtime or is the runtime going to like self-reset and just resend its message every time we hit that 1,000 mark or the 10 mark in this case? How would we find that answer?
Go to, oh, help button, that's what you want.
That's what I wanted. Hit the help button, or somebody could have said, call Joe. Yeah, oh, Diego, right. Don't call Joe. The what? Oh, the eye?
Yeah,
Oh, there we go. So that should just refresh our view. Yeah, that just refreshes our view. But if you hit the X, I bet it'll reset. Clear the hours of this runtime. Yes or no? So that's how you would reset that value.
But you would have to do it manually. That's the thing, I mean, it seems like, so for example, for a filter, timing for your filters, you want that runtime to continue until you change the filter and manually
Correct.
reset it. But there may be times that you want to set an alarm that comes, or something that comes up and it keeps counting. That
Yep.
you're using that timer, or that count, that accumulator to accumulate the time until it's forever.
Gotcha. So to solve that particular problem, we're going to come back into our notification setting. Where did I go? There we go. Our notification settings. The way I would solve that is re-notify every 100%. Oh, come on. You won't let me do 100?
It was a great idea, though.
I tried to make it easy. So on that one, I don't know what the official answer is, Robin. I will tell you what I would set up, you know, being an amateur with this system right now. If it was something like, let's use the status on a fan as our example. So if I want my technician to go check belt tension every 1,000 hours, and I want him to replace the belt every 5,000 hours, and I want to maintain a running log of how many hours that motor has run, I'm going to set up one run time that 1,000 hours,
Yep.
check tension. I'm going to set one up 5,000 hours, change the belt, and I'm going to set one up that has no notification settings. So it just keeps logging time.
So in terms of when the first maintenance gets done and you want to reset that, how does the technician who's replaced the filter do that?
That is a great question. Can we hold that question? Okay. Remind me when we hit our next big topic. So we're going to go through programs, or finish through programs. When we transition and start talking about the next one after programs, we'll come back to that question, because that is fantastic.
We all, you know, those of us who have to write every little bit. Think about
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And if we were ready to segue into the other topic, I'd run with it, but
Yep.
we're not ready. So,
No problem.
run times. We good? Like it? Love it? Great. We'll move on. Next up on our list, yeah, I need to save changes.
Just one question, Mark.
Peter.
You know, you hit the little plus over there, you get if equals and equals,
Yes.
you keep adding more conditions.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of conditions might we be adding? The runtime.
If there's not an on for the other piece of equipment.
Yeah, maybe we want to know when any one of our air handlers is running. Or let's go back to our example where we have a bunch of water source heat pumps in a building. We want to accumulate the amount of time when any heat pump is running. Okay? So, because in an unoccupied mode, we have the ability to just kick on one heat pump to take care of that space if it's occupied override, or if it just hits its maximum or minimum to kick on overnight. So if we wanted to track any time a heat pump is running in our building, we would add in the run status or whatever point we were choosing to monitor to say, yes, this heat pump is running. And we would add that for each of the heat pumps. And we would use that option that said, anytime any of these are true. Something along those lines. Or we wanted to log the amount of time we had both pumps running at the same time. Either for changeover logging or awareness of one of the pumps being left in hand, something like that. Or, maybe they're both variable speed pumps and we want to know when we've got high demand. Count those hours we had high demand and had to run both pumps to maintain system pressure. Those are the ideas I've got for why. Brad, do you have one?
Yeah, I'll use it occasionally for tenant billing. Property managers have their building occupied from 7 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock at night. They have tenants that occasionally want to come in after hours. So they'll, in agreement, they'll charge them per hour of runtime, X number of dollars, and you trend it through a runtime report.
Yep.
And at that point in time, I'll set up a group that email for that specific report goes right straight to the property manager.
Absolutely. And in that situation, you would use something like the override occupied to log it, or fan status and not occupied, something along those lines for multiple point reference. Great example. Okay. Shall we move on to calculations? All right, I'm going to right click over in my menu over here, create new item. I'm going to scroll down to new calculation. I know, you were shocked by that. Okay, we got a new calculation.
What are we calculating?
I don't know. We'll find out. Bob's going to mess with it, so. I figured we might as well just start off with that.
Scrolling down is a pain.
Okay. Once you have your new calculation, left click on it, and we're into our calculation menu. Okay. This looks a little bit more complex than the other things we've dealt with so far, but really it's very, very similar. Up here at the top, we can choose to reference as many points as we want, or I think our maximum is like 100 or something like that. Yeah. We could reference up to 100 points. So if you needed to average the, room temperature for your entire building, you could put an average up to 100 VAVs in one, and if you had more than that. I'm reaching for reasons why you would care. Yeah, outdoor air. Yeah. So what I think I'm going to calculate is I'm going to look at the error between my discharge air temperature and my discharge air temperature set point. So I'm going to bring in my discharge air temperature as 0.1 and my set point is 0.2. Okay? Something that this does that you might like if you're trying to do lots of points, or not like if you're only doing a couple of points, is it automatically scrolls down as you add a new point. When you're adding lots of points, that's really convenient. With 2 points, you add 2 and you're like, wait, where did my points go? Okay? It's a feature. Okay? Okay? So next up, we've got to set up our function. So we're going to use, we've got options. It will automatically find us the maximum value, the minimum value, the average value, or the median value. Well, that's cool. but it won't tell us the difference between two numbers, right? So we can do a custom number. Okay? And I'm just going to, if we look right under the bottom, it's going to give us information about our points, what we need to fill in here. Okay? So, for example, if we want to take the difference between these two numbers, we need to say at V1 minus at V2.
B?
V as in voice. Variable. Actually, in this case, it's referencing the value of those points.
So
Okay?
B is the value.
V is for value.
What's our number one there, Robert?
Number one is the discharge air temperature.
Say B for value. This is current.
Yeah. For reference, V is not the only thing we can do in here. There are lots of different references, just like when we were looking at alarms and including information in the alarm. There's a lot of data buried in each point.
Is case sensitive?
I don't know. Try it and find out. I'll try it in capitals, you try it in lowercase, and we'll find out if they both work or neither work. There we go. Well, it works with capitals. Did it work with lowercase? Oh, to make it activate, hit save.
Oh, it did.
I gotta figure out where I was going there. A lot.
That's right. It was a good question. So, you've got those at V1 minus V2. Go ahead and hit your save up at the top.
Oh, okay, that's all I.
There we go. And if we scroll up on that window, running okay. Okay?
Case insensitive.
So, we answered the question for once. Case insensitive. So you can use capital V's or lowercase v's. Okay? When you're doing calculations, my wager would be that almost all of the time you're going to be looking at the value of these points. The name of the point is going to be significantly less helpful when you're trying to do math. Okay? Just putting that out there.
So the one is pointing to line 1, 2 is pointing to line 2.
Correct. That the 1 and the 2 in our equation are literally value of point 1, value of point 2. Great question. Okay. We are not limited to just dealing with our values here. Okay? If we needed to manipulate that value further, maybe we're not looking for the error between two points. Maybe we're looking for airflow or something like that. Then we can go in and add constants, do further mathematical operations, things like that. Great question. Does the output of this calculation have to go to a virtual point? The answer to that is no. The calculation itself serves as that virtual point. Okay? Which also means that you could, if we had two other calculations, we could grab this calculation and use its results as a point in a further calculation. Okay? Careful with doing that, because from a troubleshooting standpoint, you really are not being nice to the next guy. Okay, we have 100 points to work with. If you can avoid having to do that, it probably would be better. Robert?
How do you figure out which has precedence, which gets calculated first? Because it could cause a problem.
It could. No, he's not talking about order of operations. He's saying if you fed one calculation off of another, depending on which one of those calculations executes first, you could end up with different values. And that's a very solid question. And I have an answer for that. I'm not necessarily sure you'll like it. For what we do, it's not going to matter. Because these calculations are executing, even if they're only executing once a second, we're only going to have to live with that screwed up value for 1 second. And in HVAC, 1 second is nothing. This was PLCs, I would be singing the other tale. But for us, that question really doesn't matter. From a functionality standpoint, we can go to our help and see if they've got an answer. My hunch is probably not so much. But my gut tells me it's going to be based off of the node value. Every item we've created in this has a node value. If you go to your Edit Options Advanced, you can read the node value. And my guess is that with each node value, that's the precedence in which it gets loaded in the system. That's a guess. It's a big guess. We'll see. Okay. So I went to the help here. I was really hoping for a little bit of syntax. For doing other mathematical functions. Specifically, I was hoping it would tell us how to do a square root. But it's not there. So, when all else fails, try it.
Let's have a temperature conversion.
Calculation is invalid. Okay. We'll try doing the square root the other way. Doesn't like that. Doesn't like it.
Put parenthesis around your first operation.
Already have it?
Oh, you do?
Yep. That's fair. So, that might be one where we're going to have to touch back with contemporary controls. Father Diego and see if we can get a little bit expanded on mathematical functions. And if all else fails, go for it.
So do asterisk, 25.
Ooh. No?
That was type operation.
See if it's object. No. Okay. Was worth a shot. So, that really leads us to what the other option is. If you can't get the runtime to do what you want, if you can't get the calculation to do what you want, what do? We write our own program. Okay? Before we go on to programs, anybody got any questions here on calculations?
Does it allow you to display an absolute value? You don't care about positive or negative except point.
Yes. ABS, so absolute value, dropping the positive negative sign off the front. If you want to do that, just put ABS, open parenthesis, close parenthesis after the end of your equation. Great question.
Could it be that it's not letting us implement that because at the time we execute the function that's creating an undefined number?
I like that idea.
Oh, the right squares. Actually, remember that. We wouldn't know that if we were going to do the syntax check.
Also, when you're doing math problems with computer programs, sometimes when in doubt, add more parentheses.
Well,
Nope.
actually, the Python has you do a library, so it's not.
Oh, hey, there we go. That did work. So the Python command with double asterisks does work. So that leads me to an answer for how do we get our other math equations or functions, things like square root, logarithms, trigonometry functions, stuff like that. Look it up in the Python dictionary. So,
If you take out the absolute value and try and do that, raise that to the square root of a negative number, return 0.
that would make sense.
It doesn't crash, which is
A positive, for sure.
wrong value, but other things do.
Yeah. All right. Other comments, questions?
So that is Python for squaring,
For raising to a power.
or put asterisks on the parentheses.
The double asterisks, and then if you're using a decimal, at least it seems to want a parenthesis there. We could try it with
And
just,
the power of -5, okay.
not -5,
I mean, 0.5.
0.5, right. It's a roundabout way of doing square root. We could try just doing 2. Yeah, just straight squared works.
Okay, but if it's a decimal, parentheses.
No, apparently not. Now it doesn't.
You tried
I did. Something's different. I didn't have the 0. I also didn't have the absolute. You're right.
that?
Yeah, you have to be absolute.
So if I wanted to put this calculation in my trends chart,
Yes.
I could just pull it out.
Put it in.
With my trends.
Yes. So, Connie just asked a really great question.
Square root of negative numbers undefined.
No, returning.
So, Connie just asked a really great question that I think it's important that all of you hear the answer to and the question. So, if we wanted to trend the result of this calculation, how do we do it? You create a trend, you drag the calculation onto the trend as one of its trended points. Okay? Thank you for asking that one, Connie. That was good.
That's important. It is.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of weird. You would think you would need to dump that value into something to be able to use it for something,
Well,
but
it has the @r underneath, and I'm like, okay, what's the @r?
yeah. Use R for the result. Yeah, that is odd. All right.
Okay.
We good with calculations? Okay. Last up on the programming list, let's create a program. New program.
There.
Program 1. After you create your program, left click on it, and we're going to get a menu that looks really similar to what we just had in our calculations, right?
Go in program.
Yep, we can write our programs now.
It'd be really nice if you hovered over an icon.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? That would be a good feature to add. The tool tips. Okay?
You don't recognize what that little spider is? Looks like a
Ladybug.
Yeah. So, icons up at the top. We've just got 3 icons. They're pretty simple. The far left one we've seen before. That is our edit button. If we need to edit our program, we can enter edit mode. Or that button doesn't do anything and I'm lying to you. If you want to edit your program, you click the edit button down at the bottom, apparently. Okay? And the little ladybug is what is referred to as a debug window. Okay? It's going to show you all of the values that you're passing into your program over here on the left-hand side. And it's going to give you any error messages or other messages that may or may not be useful to you over here on the right-hand side. Okay? There will be times when you write complex programs that you're going to want to report certain values as you progress through the program. Really useful when you're trying to figure out, okay, I got it all programmed, it compiled, why is it barfing garbage? And you start checking your values as you go through by sending messages to your debug window. Okay? Back to life. This is where we get into real programming for those of you who are unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Well, you'll get more so, don't worry. You'll think you'll be picking it up and then something weird will happen and you're like, wait, what? I thought I understood. Nope, I didn't. No. This isn't Java. Don't worry, it's not that bad. Okay? Oh, I know why the edit button didn't do anything, because we were already in the edit side of the menu. Okay? For those of you who have taken a programming class, what's the first program you write? Hello World. It's a way to test the fact that your program can work. Okay? It's really easy. Hopefully. We're going to type message, MSG, open parenthesis, hello world, close parenthesis. The programming samples I've seen said that it wasn't in quotes, that it was the parentheses that were the key. I don't know. Okay? But we get to find out if that was right. Because what we're going to do is we're going to hit save. And up here on the right-hand side, it gives me useful information. It says program error, see debug messages. I guarantee it's going to be a syntax error on line 1. Oh, hey, look, syntax error, line 1, character 15. You didn't like the end of the line. Which doesn't actually mean that it didn't like the end of the line. We can try classic things. One of the common things in programs is they want a certain character at the end of a line. Semicolon is common. Does Python like colons? No, not colons. Semicolon?
No, it likes the character with the line, right?
Put a space between message and hello world. Yeah.
Space between message and hello world. We'll try that. Nope.
You may need some quotes there. I didn't get it in there.
We'll try quotes.
I didn't get an error.
You did not put it in?
Oh,
I put it in parentheses.
Did that work? I have in parentheses and then hello world.
I've got it in parentheses and hello world in quotes. And it, status disabled, so it did save. So,
you use quotations.
yeah, parentheses, then quotations inside. And I will tell you, Oh, I know why it was. Well, no. What did you put? Somebody said they got it to work without using quotes. Who was it? Brad,
No,
was that you?
no, I still get debug message.
Okay.
I need my messages that MSG is not defined.
It'll pass letters without space. If you put out the quotes, you can't have a space in hello world. Wow. It'll pass.
Oh, okay.
As long as it's got a semicolon period.
Okay. So this is a whole discussion that we're not going to have. As far as my guess as to why is because of data types. As soon as we put quotes around it, it knows we're talking about a string and we're not trying to reference a value or something like that. That's my guess. Not an expert in Python. Okay? Now, if we go to our debug menu after we successfully save, what should we see? Bugs. Or no bugs. We ought to see a message that says hello world, right?
So you have, when I enabled it for execution,
Ah,
And it's past bang.
MSG is not.
why don't I have a hello world message? I saved successfully. It's still disabled. You got to turn the program on.
yeah, enable it.
So, this is where I warned you to be cautious. If I set it to enable, right now it's set to execute every 1 second. That's way faster than we need most of our HVAC programs to run. So it ought to fill up that debug window really fast with hello world. Please note, I'm not actually assuming that it's going to work and tell me hello world, but we'll find out. I'm going to let it execute every 20 seconds. I'm going to save. Now I've got an error.
Yeah, MSG is not.
Okay. Message is not defined. Let's put a space.
Click on,
Now we're running.
really?
I put a space between message and that first parenthesis.
Between what?
Message and the first parenthesis. Now it got an error. Nope, didn't help. It just hadn't run again. So it looks like trouble. And
No space between hello and world.
Yeah, but that's,
That shouldn't matter.
sure, I'll give it a try.
Mine says it's right.
well, we've got timer is running. Ask how do you equal 0?
Now I got an error status. So, my default answer would be let's go look at the help. Okay. Now, one of the things I find interesting about this is right up here at the top, it tells you for more information about how to write programs, go to programming reference. But it's hyperlinked at least. I kind of think it ought to be part of this conversation, but hey, whatever. So this will give you basic rules on how to write Python. It will give you examples as well. Okay? Now I will tell you, annoyingly enough, MSG, the message to be able to send the debug window isn't actually in this menu. This was one of the things I had to ask Diego about. So I'm going to go back to my email from Diego, where I specifically asked about how to send a message.
There's a debug command that will send a message to the debug window.
There we go.
So debug instead of MSG.
Yep, that is what we want. Oh, and it is in here. Oh, that's why I got it messed up.
Right, it's what it's on, string that you're setting.
So instead of message, debug. So, hey, look, message, hello world. Hey, I wrote my first Python program today. You think I'm joking? I am not. Okay, and here in about another 10 seconds, it ought to say hello world again. One of the nice things is it's giving us timestamps. That I like. Okay. Now, this is one of those, at least 2 points where I really wish Brian had been here, Brian Level. Because yesterday at the data center, we could have made fun of him a little bit because they're running on Delta controls.
Yeah.
Delta, when Brian was still a contractor in the controls world, his company repped Delta. Okay? So it's always kind of fun when you're out of that side of it and you see the product that you used to do. And Delta really isn't popular around here. So that's, anyway, made me think of Brian. This also made me think of Brian because, honest question, who got a little bit frustrated while we were trying to get this to work?
What's that?
A little bit. It's part of the growing pains of learning a programming language. But that's one of those things with learning that Brian likes to point out, is that a little bit of frustration helps the learning process. There's definitely a point where you get too much frustration and you shut down the computer, or you physically assault the computer, things like that. Okay? So, I'm going to come back into my edit mode. And I'm not going to write anything real wild and crazy further, but would it be nice to know when that error that we were calculating was above a certain threshold? But not to the point where we need an alarm for it, but, you know, it's a realistic thing we could program around. Okay? So the first thing we have to do is we have to pull that calculation into our system. Okay? And I'm actually going to come in and edit this calculation. Somebody's messing with me. Somebody is working in my controller. Or I forgot to delete this old calculation. One of the two. There we go.
Continue to get, yeah, you look at top of it.
Yeah. It's working.
I wanted to get rid of my square root value so I'd actually see it go above 2. Okay. I also need to cancel that. If you are writing a program and just need to get rid of a point you did before, just replace it with whatever you need now. Now, this is useful. I drug in a point called Bob will mess with this. Please note once again, programmers are what? Lazy. Is a programmer going to want to write Bob will mess with this every time they want to reference it in a program? Not unless they're only going to reference it once, which even then, no. So let's shorten this up to a shorter name. We're going to call this Bob. Okay? Isn't it though? Isn't it though?
That says it all, brother.
So now, notice my reference name is now @Bob. Okay? I didn't know we got onto Twitter, but why not? We'll go. Okay? I heard one chuckle at least. I'll take it. So anytime we need to reference the value from that calculation, we're going to use @Bob. Okay? So I'm going to come in here after my hello world. By the way, this is a great point to discuss. There will be times when you're writing a program where you write a line and you're like, this line has value, but I don't really need it right now. Or when you want to talk about the line you just wrote, you know, kind of making a note to yourself or a note to somebody else. This is a process called commenting. Okay? In Python, you use the number sign to create a comment. So now, this old line that I wrote that said hello world is now commented out. The compiler will ignore it, is basically what it does. Okay? So now if I save my program and go back to the window, or the debug, it will never say hello world again. Okay? But let's do something useful. If, open parentheses, @Bob greater than, space greater than 2, close parentheses, colon, enter tab, son of a,
Tab doesn't work.
yep,
That's what you're saying, right?
write it in Notepad or something. So instead I'm just going to hit space, space, debug, quote, Bob is too big. Colon. Okay? Save. Debug. See if this works. Notice now, over here, that we've got a value that we're referencing. We can see what the value is. Oh, when it executed, Bob was greater than 2. So it said Bob is too big.
But you can execute any program any which way or whatever point.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
You could put the value of Bob there.
Different way to logically progress.
Yep. Okay. Another useful thing is, what if Bob is less than 2? We could write another if statement to say if Bob is less than 2. Again, yeah, what was that about programmers? They're lazy. There's a function called else that is part of an if statement. Else, space, space, the line down, debug, Bob is okay.
After you print these.
Yep.
Oh, now I can't see back there. Is that a colon or
After which colon?
after you print these?
Oh, parentheses, quotes.
On the,
Hang on. I'll make this easy.
okay, so it's a colon. And you have to put spaces, and there's no space after the if.
No space after the if.
We're gonna edit the training.
Whatever your calculation is.
Edit.
Right now, my error is really big, so we'll see if we ever get to the else statement. But Python is an easy, as far as programming languages go, Python really is one of the easier ones. There are others that make life significantly more difficult, especially for initially writing a program. There's very little setup we had to do for this.
Say, PPCL
Mhm.
is just about the same as
Mhm.
Python.
Yep.
So for me, it's a lot easier because you don't have to do all the drops and stuff there.
Right. Yeah. PPCL, Control Basic, Plain English are all three common. Correct. And that's an excellent analysis, Jenny. This else is basically saying if Bob is less than or equal to 2, Bob will be okay.
Keep getting in there.
We're getting there.
Is that a space under the like 2 colon? Or why is that indented?
It is a space, yes.
Double space.
Again, Bob is too big, but your Bob is less than 1.
Yeah.
So there's some logic error somewhere in here.
What am I doing wrong?
Wait, Robert,
Hang on. I'm checking something. That was an error. Yeah, I did just take out the spaces. Some programming languages are really particular about white space. And I know with Python, the spacing over of these 2 debug statements is important because that's telling the program that it is underneath this if statement. So having the too much space here in the if could be what was causing my problem. We'll find out. Brett.
I'm not getting anywhere.
Okay.
Now, what I'm doing wrong. I can
New count.
invalid syntax line.
Okay. Let's click on that new calc point up there. And let's just change it to one word with no underscore. Make sure you've got an uppercase C there, just in case it's case sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
That's a first for me. Let's jump to debug and make sure it's doing it.
Yeah, look out greater than 2.
There you go.
Okay, so I can't have an underscore in there.
I'm
So-
getting an error message.
I will be there in just a second. So Brad just ran across an interesting one. If your point name has an underscore in it, it's not going to like it as a reference. I'll tell you, that's a first in programming for me.
Really, that's,
Yeah. If you go to the
And
Hill
thank you,
thing,
Robert, because I don't know that I did.
Let's look at your,
if you go to the Hill thing,
you don't have any
it's got a
point
big
that you're referencing.
parentheses around
Oh.
Drag your thing
underscores, so
over.
you cannot use them at all.
Mixed
I
air
looked that up
temperature,
because
or
I'm
any
used to using
point?
numbers.
Yeah,
Whatever, so I
underscore
was using
everything,
that error
especially
calc
like
that we had
temporary
figured out
controls, 'cause
before,
I'm limited to
but you
character.
can use any calc that you want, or any number that you want, as long as it is a number.
Ah,
So what was it, Russell?
I renamed that,
Cal, yep.
that,
Finger hand, yep. All right, let's go back to our editor. Oh, you have if capitalized. Try a lowercase I.
I'm used to doing
Yep, because you are used to writing things, not programming.
that. Oh. When I write my PPCL, I'll hit cap locks.
Oh.
And I do all cap
Just
locks.
do, okay, there you go. Let's try that. See if that was what it was. I'm not going to promise that it was.
Yep, there it is. So this, in Python, you gotta keep everything lowercase.
Hmm.
Unless I'll
Yeah.
try.
There you go. There you go.
so my mixed air temperature has a value.
Okay,
um,
so
but I'm
let's
still
go
getting-
ahead.
Still getting that error message.
Right, because you are, let's go back to our edit.
Okay.
Let's click on our mixed air temperature. And let's call it Bob.
Oh, Bob.
Yep.
Oh,
Because what you were doing is you were referencing Bob down here, but the program didn't know what Bob was. So save.
so. Saved?
Yep.
Oh,
Now we're running. Thought it was too big.
yep. Beautiful.
All right.
what I'm finding here, Robert,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty odd, is,
I'm going to come around. Hang on just a sec.
is I've got set up, send the value of Bob over, just
Mm-hmm.
debug. Now, whether that, whether it sends non-numerics over, I don't know, but, look at it. It's saying Bob is 31.
Okay.
It's saying Bob is too big, even though Bob is 0.3 here. Here it's saying 31, so that's a pretty.
Is 31 the value of Bob?
That's what I'm sending over with the debug.
That's why I have to
When I'm looking at debug, I'm sending Bob over.
Right. So for whatever reason, it thinks Bob is at 31.
Right. And I thought, well, I can just take this out, because maybe that's screwing the Bob.
I don't think so. Oh, I think I know I'm doing something wrong.
Now that Bob is over two.
Party boy.
That's what you're.
Nope. Oh, we could do that. We actually probably should move on. All right, but we are at the break point, break time, so
Break point, or is that a
maybe.
slip?
It could be. Get variable.
I just feel all the places that occur. So let's just run the equipment 24/7.
Right.
And you can kind of see my hash rate. It's trying to create that. Standard 36.
Yep.
Just automate the whole thing. Take the operators out.
Yeah, and I think it will work really, really poorly.
Well, in Jay's opinion, we'll ask to go through.
Right.
The system will start.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Maybe. Aha. Yes, sir.
Search in your programming reference for get value.
Yeah, I just put that one in.
Oh, is that what you did?
Yep, yep. So, might have solved it. We'll find out. Come on. Ah, yeah, yeah. There we go. So, instead of just doing @Bob, we need to do get value with a capital V of Bob in parentheses. Yep.
What's that for?
That will actually pull the value of Bob instead of referencing the I bet it's the node number of Bob. Yeah. So, Robin, right-click on your calculation for me.
Click on calculation.
In the tree. Edit point. And
Calculation.
let's go to advanced. Value 31. So, why it didn't work before, why Bob was always too big, was because it wasn't getting the value of Bob. It was grabbing the node ID of Bob because that's what we told it to do. That was why. All right, now that that's sorted, it is 3:05. Let's take a 15-minute break and be back here at 20 minutes after. Now, Russell?
Cap lock will work, we have to keep it on lowercase.
Caps lock won't work, all lowercase. So, what we're finding out also is that Python is very case sensitive with the commands. So, like I said here, the get is all lowercase, the capital in value is, or the V in value is capitalized. You have to get it exactly how it wants it, or it will not recognize your commands.
So I like body blocks.
What's that? Keep the V capitalized, but don't capitalize anything else.